If we take ourselves seriously, which of course we're not, ourselves seriously, and involves so many. How can
No, well, I'm really stuck already.
Well, and feel refreshed for a new day. It's great that our final speaker has joined us today. He's arrived about 10 minutes to spare. 12, not plenty of time. So our speaker this morning is a parish priest in Reading, works particularly with mission to young people, but for the last couple of years he has been working at Lambeth Palace as an advisor on evangelism and witness to Archbishop Justin. I have the privilege of meeting him back in January and thoroughly enjoyed that conversation, and so I'm sure you will do as well. It's a great pleasure to welcome this morning Chris Russell.
Hi. Hi. Clock there. Well, we go to 11:15, that's right, isn't it? Great, it's lovely to be here. I once had a lectern or whatever, like a music stand really, like this, and it had holes in it. And I remember I was like playing around and I put my finger in it, and then it wouldn't come out. It's a subtly kind of. It's really nice to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Let's pray. Lord God, we thank you for your great goodness to us. We thank you for the blessings that we've known already today. We thank you for the things you called us to be part of. And we pray that you would be among us and be stirring in our hearts and our minds. You would be shaping our lives that we may take responsibility you call us to, and we may do that with hope. In Jesus' name. Amen. I am a vicar in Reading, which is God's own town. I've been there for 14 years. There's a church right in the town centre called St Lawrence, Janet knows well, and it's an ancient building, and we were given a mandate when we arrived 14 years ago by the deanery to see non-church young people come to faith and to build new models of church for them. And so that's what we've been doing there for 14 years. It's not a youth church, anyone can come, all ages, but we spend all our money on young people. We see about 250 young people a week in various things, at school, off school club, those kind of things, and there's a community of people at St Lawrence now who are like got about 40 children under the age of 11, and we've only got like small, so there's only about 80 or 90 adults and about 70 teenagers regularly who worship together. And that for me has provided a backdrop for everything I do on evangelism and witness. Archbishop Justin asked me to become his advisor on this priority, and I said I really didn't want the job because I was never going to leave St Lawrence for something like that. I've known him for about 25 years, so I'm able to be that rude to him. And he said I don't want you to leave St Lawrence because I need you to be rooted in the locality so you know that. So you And so I run the two jobs fairly separately, actually. I'm at Lambeth on a Wednesday and Thursday, and then I'm at Sunrise Thursday. So for me, the priority of evangelism and witness is something that feels like I've spent some time trying to work this thing out. You'll know just in the three priorities of prayer and renewal of religious life, everything's getting very exciting at Lambeth. The people from St Anselm are going to be arriving like in 6 weeks or something terrifying. And so that's going to be a huge change. 16 people living residentially at Lambeth, and then some other people who are going to be full-time that are going to be coming in a couple of times a week. Reconciliation, the stuff on reconciliation that David Porter, my colleague, is doing is just extraordinary, both within the church and the church as an agent of reconciliation. And then this on evangelism. Today, there's a debate in the Lords on religious freedom. Justin wrote an op-ed in the Times this morning saying that in a society where we prize religious freedom, we also prize the ability that we have in the freedom of this country to be able to speak the truth about what we believe in a way that isn't just conveying information, but is in a way of making a case for it. However, on the one hand, I think in our society we've got people who, or certainly some of my friends who feel like evangelism is kind of predicated on the notion that they're going to be told that they're wrong. I met with some of the reactions since I was taken on this brief have been fascinating. The Hindu Forum got in touch with us. They were particularly concerned that the New Archbishop had stated his priority was going to be evangelism. And they met with us, and it was just extraordinary because they perceived that everything that had happened in the past 2 weeks, there was a speech by Lord Harris in the House of Lords, there was some advice from the Foreign Office about travelling to India, and there was this meeting that I set up in London, Paris. And when they arrived, they'd been told by their friends not to drink the water that we would provide for them at Lambeth because they thought we were like, there was this kind of conspiracy against them. And they said, this is the thing, Mr. Russell, that we think you're trying to do. You're trying to destroy our very way of life. And I had a task in the room to convince them that a commitment to evangelism wasn't a commitment to destroy their very life. So on the one hand, we've got evangelism taking place in a multi-faith context, and then we've got evangelism taking place in a consumerist society where it can simply look like another consumer choice. When the Archbishop started talking about what his priorities were going to be, he was going to use the word mission. And through various pieces of advice, it became clear that the word mission had become so all-encompassing that it kind of meant everything. And so he said, Chris, if I make you advisor on mission, I'm making you advisor on everything the church does. So he said, let's use the word evangelism. But obviously, there are some instant reactions you get when you use the E word. I wonder if you could just discuss amongst yourselves, what kind of reactions might we get if we use the E word? You've got 2 minutes and 24 seconds.
I
So let's hear some of these things. What might some reactions be to the E word? They don't have to be your reactions. You can own them if you want. But what kind of reactions might we get using the E word?
It's a bit keen.
It's a bit keen.
Yeah.
Yeah. A bit keen on.
Well, it's a bit, keen. Enthusiastic.
Okay, great. It's a bit keen. What else?
My faith is private. I don't talk about that kind of thing.
Sure, how you doing? Okay, private. Yeah, brilliant. Keen and private. Anything else?
Well, in your face, kind of, helpful, and kind of, you just want to get away, kind of, that sort of, door knocking or fostering, messaging in your face.
Good.
Please go away.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm reading this really great book at the moment, Evangelism for Normal People. By a guy called John Bowen. It's quite, I'm saying it's quite an old book in it's 15 years old. But it's really great. He starts with this quote from Becky Manley Pippert. There was a part of me that secretly felt evangelism was something you shouldn't do to your dog. Okay, great. Any other things?
We're reflecting that evangelism must have successfully been done with us at some point, but we don't necessarily remember what that was. So perhaps when it's done well, we don't notice it's evangelism.
It was in the water. Which water? We're right.
Any other things?
Hit and run Christianity.
Yeah.
You used to do it a big blast. You thrust a tract into somebody's hand, or you do a weekend and then you disappear off somewhere else.
Yeah, linked to that, a risk of mission, but not on the part of a faith community. It's just divorce from a church, which won't work.
We have a sense of people thinking they're judged by you. A sense that people don't want to hear the message because their own views are private and you're imposing on them, and what's more, you're judging them.
It also felt a sense of energy and excitement that it was just something absolutely essential.
Great. And any other things?
I think for those who think it's a good idea, it's somebody else's job, not mine.
Yeah, someone else's job. Great. Sorry.
I was just having a conversation with my colleague, Melbourne Anglican, a few years ago. One of the writers was talking about the phrase "Jesus loves you" and how nuanced that is, and how it doesn't make sense. It may be. And was offering the possibility of talking about Jesus loves you and what that might mean, and making a conversation. So I do respect the E word, but the idea that Jesus likes you, and you have a conversation about what that might mean, that kind of resonated with me.
My sense was when Justin said that he was committed to evangelism, some people were like high-fiving, going, brilliant, here's our endorsements coming. And some people were, I think some friends of mine actually said, we're not doing that again. Like really, they said, we're doing another one of those. Thinking that it was going to be around initiatives, it was going to be around, programs, and you will know more than anybody around initiatives and programs. So, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set out what I think, we're talking about. I'm talking about around evangelism and witness, about why that's such a commitment. And I'm happy for you to interrupt and take questions and to disagree with me, and let's just see where we get. I'm going to describe evangelism as an initial proclamation. In 2013, there was a paper going around the House of Bishops talking about evangelism is a process by which someone becomes a disciple of Jesus Christ. of course, discipleship is vital. I don't think that's what evangelism is, though. I think evangelism is about initial proclamation. I think initial proclamation with the desire and with the intention that people become disciples, but I think discipleship is different than evangelism. And so I particularly talk about this initial proclamation, the declaration. And from my perspective, it's a declaring of good news that wouldn't be known unless it was declared. This isn't something that people automatically know, and it is profoundly good news. But what is absolutely vital is motive. In Reading, there are cameras everywhere, watching every move that everyone in the town centre makes. And one point, I was outside St Lawrence. There's a paved area outside St Lawrence. I was outside St Lawrence with a group of young people, and because it was a lovely day, we were just chatting outside. And then we all went inside. We went inside, about 20 of us, and shut the door. And then about a minute later, a police officer ran through the door out of breath. And I said, "Oh, hi. What can we do?" And he said, "Well, I just got a call that on the CCTV that they'd seen loads of young people enter a church." I said, "Yeah, do you want to come and meet them?" And he said, "Oh, I said, what was the rush?" He was rather embarrassed. Said, I thought they were going to come and steal something. I was like, what? How fascinating is that? Like the police get a call, quick, young people are going into church. And you know, he completely misread the motive that they were coming in. They thought it was absolutely hilarious. That was actually, then what happened later with the police was, we used to have, at St Lawrence, we reordered the building inside, and we used to, during the day, someone used to come and do loads of stuff with some young people who'd been excluded. It stopped a year ago when public funding stopped. The police once came in to arrest one of the young people. Well, I was not going to happen. So I went down and said, "Actually, did you know you can't come into a church building and arrest someone?" And they went, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, so sorry." So they went out, and then, you know, I called this guy. And then I said to somebody, I think at Deanery chapter, "Oh, you know, because I told the police I couldn't do it." And they said, "Well, where did you get that from?" I said, is that not the case? I thought it was the case that police couldn't come in and arrest someone in the church, but they went, "No, complete non-reaction. You go anywhere and arrest you anywhere." So this is extraordinary. I mean, the police have been wonderfully trusting and trusted me that I did know whether I could come into a building and arrest someone, but actually apparently they can come in to arrest young people, which they've done twice since. So anyway, motive. So this person had got motive completely wrong in terms of what these young people were at. But I think in terms of evangelism, motive is essential. Now, we all know, and some of us have been on, like maybe are Christians because of all sorts of motives. But I think what I want to say absolutely around evangelism is the commitment to evangelism isn't self-survival. This isn't because the church is in an absolutely dire crisis, and unless we do something, it's like quick, do something. And it's not because we've got to pay for the church roof. It's not because we need more money. And it's not because we need success. It's not because we want some extra people in who can kind of tip the scale so we can be taken a bit more seriously. But for me, it's absolutely essential that we get motive right when we're thinking about evangelism. And what I found around the country is when I say evangelism, I lose people when I start using the E word sometimes with people, because they think I'm automatically going to talk about some kind of initiative and some kind of growth structure. Did you see that there was I only saw about 5 minutes of the last series of Rev, did anyone seen where the Hugh Bonneville character puts a seminar on for him on his own? I mean, you can relate to it so much because we've all been part of those kind of things. But he's like, you know, this is church growth, and church is essential that your church is successful and your church is financially stable, and for that you're going to have to do evangelism. This isn't the motive behind evangelism. It isn't a church growth strategy, and it isn't a self-survival technique. It isn't to make people like us. It is because of the commitment of Jesus Christ. So I would turn to 2 Corinthians 5 all the time. The love of Christ compels us because we're convinced that one died for all. It seems to me absolutely vital that the underlying motive for why we do evangelism, why we're committed to evangelism, is the love of Jesus Christ. And I think, because then I think we can, you know, we're not going to be just hung up on figures or on techniques which have worked somewhere and added 100 to a congregation or something like that. We can be committed to Jesus Christ and try to come to terms with his love. So that's the driver, I think. That's the motive. It is the love of Christ. The love of Christ compels us because we're convinced that one died for all. And as well as Jesus Christ being the motive, Jesus Christ is the plumb line. So in terms of, if we're talking about the ethics of evangelism, I think it's possible to, I mean, it's sloppy language, so forgive me, to do evangelism in a way that negates the very person that we are talking about. So if we're talking about the ethics of evangelism, I think it's possible to engage in evangelism in a way that undermines the good news we're speaking about and the one to whom we're bearing witness by the way we're doing it. So for me, not only is the motive Jesus Christ, but he's the plumb line which sets everything around what we do around evangelism. And so I think exploring how that's key is vital for us. Evangelism is then, I think, if we're still in 2 Corinthians 5, is a declaration of what has happened in Christ. So, obviously in verse 17 of 2 Corinthians 5, if anyone is in Christ, new creation. There's a proclaiming, a telling of an event. And a passage I've used more than any other passage is an obscure passage in 2 Kings 6 and 7, the siege of Samaria. It's a fascinating passage, telling around, I think it's around the time of Elisha, telling how in Samaria, which was a town, a city on a hill, on a plain. So there was a plain all around Samaria, and Samaria was on a hill, and so it was fortified. And obviously being fortified, it meant that it was able to be defended very well, but it meant it was very susceptible to being laid siege. And so 2 Kings 6 and 7 tells how the Arameans had camped around Samaria and just laid siege to it. And so we're told that horrendous situations keep occurring in Samaria as the town is cut off from food and from water and from commerce, anything. And the crisis that takes place in Samaria, as there's no food, and so in graphic detail we're told, you know, that donkeys' heads sell for huge amounts of money because they're the only things that can be eaten, and people eat poo. And then there's this horrendous story of 2 mothers who make a pact about their children, and they'll eat one mother's child one day and another child the next day, and they do that on the first day, and on the second day the other mother won't let it happen, and she cries out to the king, says this is unfair, we went through this pact, and calls to the king of Samaria, and the king of Samaria turns to her and rents his clothes and is utterly hopeless, and hasn't got any advice for her or any wisdom to give her in this situation. And so the scene is set up there in 2 Kings 6 where this town is completely hopeless.
And around the town, the people in the town look out amongst the tents and they just see the enemy camped there against them. And they're like, well, we can do absolutely nothing. And then we're told that there are 4 lepers at the gate of the city. And we're told that these 4 lepers then have to decide whether to go into Samaria or whether to go into the tents of the Arameans. And you kind of get the sense that they think they're going to die whichever way. You know, it's not going to look good for these guys. But they can't, you know, they're lepers, so if they go into the city, they're going to, like, there's nothing in the city anyway. And if they go into the tents, well, they've probably got more chance, a slightly more chance of not dying there. And so we're told that what the lepers do is the lepers go into these tents, trembling in fear, and they arrive in these tents, and when they look at these tents, they find that the situation is completely different than they thought. You'll know the story. You'll know that what's happened is that in the night, God's caused a noise to be heard, and the Arameans who are camped around have presumed that what's happened is that some people in Samaria have paid an Egyptian army to come to their aid. And so hearing these noises, the Arameans in absolute terror have fled. And at fleeing, they have left everything. And so in these tents, there is food and water, there are clothes, and there are great riches. So we're told in 2 Kings 7 that what happens is these 4 lepers go to these tents, and in these tents start finding all these things, like who knew this had happened? And they start to find these things, and then what happens is they start to hide the things. They take them away for themselves, and with intention to then come back to another tent. And so what we're told then is that one turns to one another, and in 2 Kings chapter 7 verse 9, one leper says to another leper, "What we are doing is not right. This is a day of good news. We cannot keep it to ourselves." Literally the word good news. Now, I suggest that this is a great picture of evangelism. This is a great picture of what we're talking about when we're talking about evangelism, because this is a proclamation of something that God has done. So in 2 Corinthians 5 language, you know, the language is in Christ's death and resurrection, the old is gone and the new has come. Evangelism is a proclamation of something that has happened in Christ. And yet, what we have is we live with people and with families and friends and neighbourhoods and communities and country where people feel under siege in their lives. And we could make all sorts of links with the fact that, you know, just like those 2 mothers turn to the king, and the king is supposed to be the person who can declare and give them advice and wisdom and help. The king has got nothing to give to them, and the fact that people turn to the people who they look to for wisdom and advice and those kind of things, and they don't have everything that people need, and yet people feel utterly besieged. My friends feel utterly besieged so much by life. So hopeless. And yet, what has happened is that rather than the tents being full of the enemy, God has acted to change everybody's situation. Everything has changed, and people don't know this. And so then, evangelism is the invitation and the declaration of what God has done in Jesus Christ for everybody. And that if people only knew, if people could only see, if people could only grasp what God had done for them in Christ, their outlook would be completely different. Now, I was in Chester the other week, and I talked on 2 Kings 7, and somebody picked me up on it, and he said, what you're not doing, what I want you to do is I want you to more clearly define the gospel than that. He said, it's just too woolly, you saying that, you know, the tents have got everything in them. And I wasn't going to take that. it's as simple as that. And so I said, I think it is as big as, you know, what God has done in Christ, and that can't be defined in one sentence. So here's my question to you now. If this is some way right, that God has acted for us in Jesus Christ, and let's mash that with the King's passage, of like the tents are full of treasure. What's some of the treasure in the tents? Why don't you do that for 6 minutes? What's some of the treasure in the tents? If what God has done for us is this big, what has God made possible? So what is some of this good news that we're speaking of? So yeah, 6 minutes, and then we'll share that.
in our favour.
Saying something. Right, okay. Thanks so much for doing that. Just throw some things out, and I'll write them down with these sentence markers. Why is it it's also do before. Okay, what the tense full of?
We talked about the transforming power of knowing you are loved.
Right. Do you want to say something a bit more about that?
Well, we also talked about the transforming power of being free from sin, but also we went on to talk about what kind of sin, and does our portfolio of sin accord with.
That's great, that's a great one. Oh, great, yes, someone who's can write in a way that people can read. Portfolio of sin.
Can people really connect with that range any longer? You know, so sexuality, not obeying your husband, divorce, those type of sin. But we're wondering, freedom from harming the planet. What is the good news about what God has done in Christ with recreation, with recreation? We weren't quite sure what the gospel is for the planet quite. We're not used to articulating that.
Okay, great. Thank you for those three. We said it. Everything working as God intended, and that means individual healing, it means relationships and community, it means the environment and the planet, but things as God wants them to be.
Great. At these kind of points, you're really great. I get really grateful that I'm not writing everything down. It's like how you capture everything. Brilliant. Okay, other things. Yeah.
I was telling you the story of a friend of mine who's doing a secondary school assembly, and she said, and so faith, hope and love abide these three, and the greatest of these is, and she paused, and they didn't know it, and they said hope. So that was their answer.
Great. Any other things? Yeah.
They're all tangible, the things in the text.
Say a bit more.
Well, they were all real things. They were picking up real things.
They picked up clothes and food and drink.
So all we were talking about is intangibles. So what we're offering people.
We talked about that a bit, and I suppose what we're getting at is social justice, really, as the maybe the prior thing to the proclamation of the good news. You need to know and feel and be embodied in what the gospel means first. And then we talked a lot about it being chicken and egg, of course, as well.
We've just done, so the Evangelism Task, the Archbishop's Evangelism Task Group has just done some research, or had some research done about public perceptions of Jesus. Because we moved forward on the idea that that church was, some people were like, didn't want anything to do with church because of various associations they made, but were far more open to talking about Jesus. And the research showed the opposite. The research showed that, and I'm not really supposed to tell you because we're not ready to go with it, public with it yet, but I can tell you, is that people are really happy to talk about God, but Jesus brings a whole load of questions and unknown things. And the thing that makes them really happy and interested in talking about God is the church's involvement in people's lives, the tangibles. And I guess I just wonder about that, talking about doing those things almost as pre-evangelism. I mean, obviously there is a way in which that is, prior to a verbal proclamation. One of the things that Justin, one of the pops he had was that, that hackneyed Francis of Assisi quote that got wheeled out the whole time. Preach the gospel at all times where necessary, use words. Well, I mean, in Justin's line there, there was no evidence ever that Francis ever said that, and the Archbishop says if he did, he was wrong. Evangelism, by necessity, has some kind of verbal, I think use words are important, but I think words are only ever going to be heard where they're backed up by a lot. From Newbegin onwards, the church is a hermeneutic of the gospel. Unless what is spoken is lived out, and it's not believed. But I think that tangible is a fascinating thing to explore.
I think that dismissal of whether or not Francis said, I think that dismissal of that is actually rather dangerous, because for centuries churches have been present in places and have worked and have witnessed in ways that is non-verbal. So I think to dismiss the non-verbal is actually really dangerous. And I would ask you to take that back to the Archbishop and say that there are swathes of clergy in the Church of England at the moment who are really worried about the direction of this. So to simply use words, and I know you just qualified it by saying backed up with action, I think you need to be very, very careful about dismissing the unseen hard work that goes on in parishes and places of worship throughout the country, where people are just held, really, and that words are not necessary.
I apologise if it sounds as if anything is being said that actions aren't absolutely vital and a huge part of the life of the church. But there is nothing that the Archbishop has ever said I don't think, to undermine a presence, incarnation, sacrificial holding of people's lives. Absolutely, there's utter commitment there. And I think what I think is a more current theme is that if evangelism is not costly and is not lived out in the presence of people with whom this community is absolutely in action and word involved and committed to, then it is nothing. So please, if there are people who are concerned that a community evangelism is just hit and run, just batter people with words, it's about going. But I suppose there was a wonder about whether there needed to be a redress of the, a preaching of the gospel without using any words, I guess. So if I'll take that and I'll think about it, but I wonder whether that pop at the Francis quote was we don't ever need to say anything, because I think we do need to say things. I'm happy to have that discussion, but
just briefly for me, yeah. I think the Francis quote says use words where necessary.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's a Francis quote.
Well, the quoted question, I think, says use words where necessary. Yeah. And to me, that's entirely fair. If it said words are never necessary, then that by all means can be taken above that.
But I guess if we're talking evangelism, I think evangelism is a word that that implies words.
To be taken in the context of a broader picture.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we all know, surely, in our own ministries, in our own families, amongst our own friends, we know that for any words that we speak ever to be taken seriously, our lives have to entirely match everything that we say. Now, I think, it's really easier for the church to not quite celebrate just how committed and how involved in locality after locality the local church is. And this research that we did showed that people didn't want to hear from something on social media. They didn't want arguments for a character they'd never heard by somebody they never knew weren't going to wash with them. But what they wanted was that a church they saw invested in their local community, doing things that they could see and touch. Then, through those relationships and through the opening of buildings were really important, prayer was really important, and talking of God, they were really open to that. And that was just fascinating. Yeah, other things.
But just some comments on that. I think the relationship and interface between evangelism and witness is a complex and fascinating one.
Yeah.
And I think it's been a huge weakness over the years that as a church we haven't really explored it.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
given people confidence in both areas.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's talk about that in a moment, because I think you're on it. Yes.
But again, I wanted to come on that, but I think it's unfortunate that's been wheeled out as a mantra, and that's happened a lot with us since I've been for a long time, that Francis isn't all not. And what I don't think it's done is encourage people to live more radical forms of shared Christian life that lead to question about, wow, this is good, so what's behind it? I think it's just absolved people who are anxious from trying to work out how we do the verbal side of evangelism. That's been my perception. Yeah. And I think the Leslie Egan quote you referred to about the only holy school gospel is a congregation of people who believe it and live it is absolutely right. Yeah. But I don't think reading out the quote has helped us explore that, because it hasn't helped us work on that balance.
I mean, can we just say this? What we could do in this discussion is just go to polarities.
Exactly. That's not helpful.
And as a church, we're really good at that polarity thing. And can we just? I'd like to say, let's have this discussion amongst ourselves. Let's be absolutely committed to lives which are and community lives which are utterly sacrificial, are involved in the lives of people, are doing things which transform people's lives, are with them and are loving them, and also that we are giving voice to the good news of Jesus Christ, not only by our actions but by our words. And I suppose when I'm part of these discussions, I fear that I'm then seen as like, okay, I'm just saying this stuff about words. My plea would be that we don't push each other to polarities on this. Yeah.
I think you need a kind of reconciliation in this room.
I don't think so. I think it's really healthy having discussions.
Yeah, I'm joking.
Yeah.
I think something we say a lot in reconciliation work is we don't use the word them at all.
Yeah.
And I think what we need to recognise here is that actually we are those people also who need the gospel, who need the good news, who need that word or action, however it is.
Yeah.
So it's not us setting up with them who need us to go and do something to them or tell them. We need to hear it too. And I think that seems to be missing a bit.
I'm so sorry, but absolutely right. So we are the lepers. We are those who ourselves have gone to these tents, and in these tents what we found. And so there is this, I love the idea of, the evangelization of myself every day. Every day I'm converted. And every day I take the cure. Every day I take these gulps of grace. And the gospel, I'm the recipient of the gospel. And because I'm a recipient of the gospel, I can tell. I can then tell of it. And so I think and in terms of witness, I think that's an absolutely key category. Now, in a moment, well, let's do evangelism and witness. Let's do the differences there, because for me, those are really, really, really essential differences. Other things, yeah.
The way that he's coming through, the thread running through a number of these is the whole issue of integration. And it seems to me what you're talking about, Chris, is the need to integrate verbal expression with all the rest of it, and see it as a whole piece, which Jesus obviously models excellently. And he's not using the short words, and it's supposed to have what type of words and what context, source for what purpose.
Yeah.
And how do you integrate all of these?
I think so, but also surely so if we're moving from, of course if we can define the gospel really simply. On the one hand, we want to say we can really clearly define this, but on the other hand, how that interfaces with the people that we're with is going to be different in every single way. Because let's look at the way Jesus Christ treated people. I mean, in every situation, there's difference. There's questions for some, there's stories for others. So, if Jesus Christ sets our plumb line for what we're doing in terms of evangelism, this is no kind of just bad boiling water solution that we're giving to churches. Here we go, just pour the kettle and put it in. The trouble is, I find, is that it feels like people want that the whole time. Those magic solutions, those things. But what happens if it's Jesus Christ we're talking about? What it means is that I have to engage with you. I have to know you. I have to be involved in this community in order to know what the things are that they need to touch and hold.
But that was what Jesus himself was wrestling with. People wanted easy answers, they wanted neat solutions, and he was permanently resisting.
Yeah, right. I think, yeah.
Very quick, I visited a non-judging parishioner near the end of her life. The punchline was, it's not forgiveness I'm looking for, it's strength. And she might well have needed forgiveness, but for her, strength was very much the presenting issue.
Yeah.
And strength is what I saw in the scriptures for weeks afterwards.
Great.
Alex, the temple police captives, I just see in our society for our stay captives for our expectations, captives by the after their expectations,
Brilliant.
Couldn't quite hear that at the back.
I'm sorry, it's my passion about people released for the captives, the captivity that modern society puts on.
Bread. Bread. Tangible things.
Bread.
Basic sustenance.
Anything else you want to get on there?
Fullness of life.
Thank you.
I'm very struck by the strength story, because the tent has all the things I need, but it has things that other people need. And then often a danger of evangelism is that I proclaim what I found I needed, and that may not be someone else.
Yeah.
The tent has always got more than we recognise as perhaps as good news.
That's a really great one. I mean, I love that story in Kings, partly because it uses the word good news. But it feels to me like this is a day of good news, we cannot keep this to ourselves. And so I think I then say, in terms of church, this is what church is for. This good news, these tents which are open to this what has happened in Christ Jesus for us, which we could one of the great things I love about hearing these things and doing these things is it excites us again with what God's done for us. We can sit around, we could sit around all morning and have brilliant conversations about everything that Jesus Christ has done for us. And all that is ours because of the work that old creation is, the old has gone and new has come. And this idea then that this is what we bear witness to.
So it's, as you know, Luther talked about the definition of sin being a heart curved in on itself. And so then, is a definition of a sinful church a church which is curved in on itself? This is why the commitment to evangelism isn't about self-survival at all. So obviously the church is orientated primarily towards God. It's not orientated to itself, it's orientated to God, and because of who that God is, we are orientated to other people. Because of who Jesus Christ is, the true and the faithful witness. Because of what he is and because of what he does, because he is the man for others. And because he's the man for others, we bear witness to him in a way that's appropriate to him. So again, with the Hindu Forum, one thing that they got, after half an hour of us talking, one of them said to me, he said, "Chris, will you answer these questions honestly?" He said, "How is it ever right to pay someone to become a Christian?" And he thought he was asking me a hard question. He thought I was going to say, well, I said, it's always wrong. It would be always wrong. He said, would it be wrong to deny someone health care until they became a Christian? And at this point I was like, of course it would be wrong. He said, well, you say of course it would be wrong, but my grandfather was refused health care until he became a Christian in India. But surely, if this is Jesus Christ we're talking about, then Jesus Christ sets every plumb line against us of how we might proclaim him. So because it's Jesus Christ, and because we do this in the power of the Spirit, and I'm really convinced by the stuff that Eugene Peterson writes on the Spirit, about the Spirit always having an address, about, we can't talk in generalities about the work of the Holy Spirit. It's always particulars. So because this is Jesus Christ, and because this is the Spirit of Jesus Christ, the words that we speak are always spoken in a specific tongue, always with a specific dialect, always with a specific accent. And so a friend of mine, Luke Bretherton, who teaches now at Duke University, says this: the challenge in evangelism requires listening and proclamation, reception and gift. We cannot presume to know what needs to be said and done with these people in this place at this time if they are truly to hear and dwell within the gospel, until we hear and dwell with them. At the end of March, it was a Wednesday, and I was at Lambeth, and I got a call from somebody who was one of my colleagues, and they said, "Chris, they found a dead body in the graveyard." I was like, wow, really? And she said, no, not. They found an ancient dead body in the graveyard. They found someone was walking through the centre of Reading, and they found a body, and they've only just done it. The police have told us they've cordoned the whole place off. And so I phoned the police, and I found out a bit about all they could tell me about this situation, and it was this tragic situation. A guy had been absolutely drunk, and had tripped over in the graveyard and had broken his neck. Sometime, he was caught on the CCTV, sometime between the hours of 8 in the morning, 8 at the evening, because that's when he walked in the graveyard, and he was found about 10 o'clock. I asked the police if he had a family. They told me that he did have a family. He had a wife and a daughter, and they said it's very complicated. He was just released from prison that morning, and so it's a tragic situation. So I left my name and my number, and I said, could you pass this on to the widow, please, and her family? And the next day I got a call from Pam, and Pam said that it had been her husband who died, and so we arranged to meet each other, and we saw each other in Holy Week, which was the following week. It was a situation which was, a terrible situation for her. He had been in prison
for domestic violence, and I was out on holiday and had come out and had got blind drunk and fallen over. It hadn't even been a deal that he hadn't come home that night, because she said often he didn't come home. And so through this contact with her, I then did the funeral at St Lawrence. There were only 10 of us there, and she has been, her and her daughter have been more regularly to church than anyone else in the whole community in the last 10 weeks. Been there every week. And what's been fascinating has been how the gospel has comforted and strengthened her, but how also it's given her that, the captives theme. How this one woman who, for 24 years, has lived at home, didn't know any of her neighbours because she was too ashamed, how she started to be released. And it's been so instructive for us on, coming around, she was around at Holy Week and Easter, and there was all this death that we were talking about. And I was like, oh goodness, we're talking about death and resurrection again. And we're talking to a woman sitting in a church, and her husband, here's our windows, and there's a gully. Her husband was found dead the other side of there. And yet, the beauty of seeing God interact with this woman as she interacts with the community. As she said to me, her greatest fear, this was 3 weeks ago, she said to me, my greatest fear, Chris, is that you're all going to leave me on my own. She said, I've never had people before, and my fear is you're all going to leave me on my own. And so for me, it's been a real helpful, beautiful lens to think, okay, what are we doing as a church, as St Lawrence Church? How do we interact with somebody who's got no contact with church, and how does that look? What's it look like for her to realise that the tents that were absolutely, that she thought were just full of the enemy and camped against her, and she was besieged, what does it mean for her that these tents are full of things that in Christ Jesus are hers and are gifts for her? So I suppose my argument is, in terms of evangelism, is that every local church, this is a mandate on every local church to do things, to be involved in things, to deliberately, intentionally be involved in offering people who aren't Christians the possibility and the place to explore what the tents have in them, for them. And it's my conviction that, as a general rule, doesn't just happen by accident. It's my, the things I've learned and the things I've seen is that it is generally the case that church communities need to be intentional about this desire to share faith and to do things deliberately to see people come to faith. And so, we can talk about courses, we can talk about which ones work and which ones don't, and figures and those kind of things. But the general rule seems to be that if churches intentionally do things, offer things, run things, with the specific hope and prayer that people who aren't Christians see the good news of Jesus and are given an opportunity to respond to them, that those churches will see people hear the good news and respond to them. So, I would say that it is, I would encourage every church to do something, and I think it's possible for every church to do something. I think that's a mandate on every local church. I think, and I think then in terms of evangelism, there are evangelists. There are those who are given the gift of evangelism, who are able to speak the good news in ways that are compelling and engaging. And I think they need to be released and encouraged and trained
and valued and honoured by the church. But those people, like you might not feel like one of those people. I wouldn't classify myself hugely in that category. I'm not someone like the previous Bishop of Reading, Stephen Cottrell, who once had this great idea, he said, to, on Maundy Thursday, to clean people's shoes in the centre of Reading. And I think I was the only member of the clergy who agreed to doing this with him. So there we were on Maundy Thursday in the middle of Broad Street in Reading, and he was like, Chris, can you make sure we've got everything on all brushes and all those kind of things? And the hilarious thing was that his family and his 3 boys brought their shoes along for him to do. Anyway, so we were there, and I, you know, we had these chairs, and I walk up to people and I go, do you like shoes? And they'd say no. And Stephen would walk up to people and go, oh, Matt, your shoes are in a terrible state. They're really terrible. Would you come and could I clean them? And they'd say, oh, of course you can. And he'd clean their shoes, and within 20 seconds, he would be talking about the love of Jesus Christ, which Jesus shows us in doing acts of service for us, and that's why. And there was no, you know, those gear, the gear changes were beautiful. There was no, you didn't go from kind of fourth to reverse, which often. This book's hilarious. This book, he starts this book. His first chapter is flasher evangelism. When he talks about, you know, that he has friends who say, this friend I know well was just like we were talking about something, and then suddenly they did this strange thing. And it comes from a Margaret Atwood book where she talks about this. I mean, it's actually horrendous because of the implications and how it speaks of Atwood links what she has experienced of evangelism with sexual abuse. I mean, it's really almost too much. I'm like, oh no, that's just a bit too much. But he says it's something which is horrendous in this way, that, you know, this just kind of forced on people. But an evangelist is somebody who is able to introduce talking about the good news in a way that isn't horrendous and isn't just, you know, where did that come from, but is just smooth. Those people need to be trained, released, encouraged. However, I think that to tell everybody who is a Christian that they're an evangelist is to do, it isn't true. You know, we're not all evangelists. And, you know, but we are all witnesses. Yeah.
I'm absolutely with you. It's really inspiring. I think one of the problems in our bog standard churches, and I think that probably speaks for a lot of us here as well, we look in that tent, and probably a lot of us here see too much work, another initiative, an IME report to be read. And the people of our ordinary churches looking at tent, and see another PCC meeting and the church cleaning rota, and we've stopped seeing the joy that is in that tent. And therefore, if we can't see it, and our congregations can't see it, we can't go out and talk about it. And my passion is to re-enable the people of our churches to open that tent and see what's really in it.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can talk about evangelism on its own without that.
Yeah, agreed.
And we've got to get rid of our churches being so busy and being so product-driven and target-driven and structured to really create some of the freedom that the tent represents. And then, yes, we'll that good.
You guys, you know, I know you know this better than I do. You know, my experience is just, you know, I've been 40 years at St Lawrence Reading with the most brilliant mandate and freedom to go and do it. You know, so I'm on shaky ground. I know
like talking to you guys about it, because I know you know more about it. But I think the witness, that's why I think witness, I mean, to be honest with you, that's why I said to Archbishop Justin when he said, well, can we do evangelism? I said, can we put witness in there as well, please? Because I think witness is a key category. Because if we're saying to people, everyone isn't an evangelist, and so I'm not asking you to do something that you can't do. I'm not asking you to do something that you can only do if you've gone on a course. I'm not asking you to do something that you have to learn some answers to from somewhere else, or you've got to learn some, okay, if they ask me this question, then I'll be able to say this. So this is why I think the category of witness is so strong, because in Acts 1:8, Jesus says to them, you will be my witnesses when the Spirit comes on you. Now, he's not using a verb. Jesus isn't saying, you will witness to me. He's not telling them what they're going to do, he's telling them who they are. So it's a noun. So my understanding of witness is that every single Christian is a witness to Jesus Christ. It's used in Acts something like 23 times. Now, if I'm a witness, then, you know, a witness is, let's take it with how we use the word witness. A witness simply says what they know. They say what they've seen, they say what they've experienced. They say what they're not a barrister who's arguing the case for, they're not the judge, they're this witness. And so I wonder whether that was it, but I think you're absolutely right about how busy everything is.
But we're not going to invite somebody who's going to look in this amazing tent unless we think there's something great in it.
But that's so Bart says that a witness is a witness of something and to something. And so we are witnesses of Jesus Christ. Now, if I'm a witness of Jesus Christ, I need to go into the tent. So there need to be things that I can speak of about what Jesus Christ has done for me. And we all, like I know, let's not say we all, I know that can be a great challenge, because I can tell you stories of what happened 3 years ago, or 5 years ago. But I think the challenge of it to me is my witness contemporary. If you say to me, Chris, tell me something that Jesus Christ has done for you in the last 2 weeks, what's that? But if we're saying to every Christian, allow God to love you, go into the tents, find the things there, and simply be ready to live out of that. And so I'm a witness of something, and I'm a witness to something. And for me, I love the term, I love the category of witness, because I'm a witness in a way that you're not, and you're a witness in a way, we're all witnesses in completely different ways, and I don't have to be a witness like anybody else, I have to be a witness simply to what I've seen, and what I've heard, and what I've experienced. And so for me, that's, you know, this is a really charged category, because even though I'm sure, you know, there are some training things, and there are some helpful things, and there are some, okay, how, you know, this feels like the biggest one, to be honest with you. How, when Archbishop Justin says, you know, what we need, we don't need more clericalism, we don't need more initiatives, we don't need more of these things. We need every Christian to understand themselves to be a witness to Jesus Christ. And we're all like, yeah, we do. And like, how do we do that one? And partly, but I'm not going to stop that as something there. John?
Chris, I wonder if you're splitting hairs a little bit here when you talk about the difference between being an evangelist and being a witness. If we understand evangelism in the narrow sense of using words, then I agree with you that some people are better at using words, better at articulating. If evangelism is living the story of Jesus, then that's what bearing witness is about as well. I mean, in the fourth gospel, a very strong tradition of witness there, and witness is a verb in the fourth gospel, and witness is actually telling the story, and it's about living the story. And there's a sense in which all Christians are called to live the story.
Yeah.